Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And today we're talking about Chinese democracy. It's the next part in my documentary about the album, and today we're talking about 1997. So 1996 was a terrible year for if you're a Guns N' Roses fan. Slash had just left the band, and Slash was, jamming with Slash's blues ball, and the question of Guns N' Roses came up in some of the interviews he did in 1997, and here's what he had to say.
Let me ask you, I want to get this out of the way like right now. What people, are asking me,
the big GNR question.
What is the big GNR answer?
It's real simple. Like, me and Axl had more or less a musical difference of opinion as far as musical direction.
Right.
Simple as that. You've heard it a million times. It's the rock and roll cliche. And instead of going where I didn't feel comfortable, I just said, you know what, you do what you're going to do. I'm just going to go out and jam. And then whenever we meet on the same ground, I'll be around. Simple as that.
So it was pretty. It was mutual, and it wasn't.
It's not necessarily mutual. It's my way of looking at it, and then his is probably a lot different. But
you're just going to go out.
I'm just going to keep, just Snake Pit again after this is over.
Right.
This is winding down now. We have like 3 more dates left, and then I'll go in and do a Snake Pit record. So.
Cool. Now, with Slash...
So the beginning of 1997, Axl, Matt, and Duff were still in the band along with Dizzy. And even though Matt Sorum wouldn't leave the band until later on in the year, around April of 97, it seemed like Axl had made up his mind in terms of who he wanted to play drums on the next Guns N' Roses record. In fact, it almost seemed like Axl was auditioning drummers while Matt was still in the band. So one of the drummers that was auditioned for Guns N' Roses was Michael Bland, who collaborated with Prince. And he did an interview back in 2006 where he said, I auditioned for them in 1997. I think Josh Freese was originally supposed to do the gig. I went to the NAMM show on January 16th of 1997, and I ran into Axl at the Anaheim Convention Center in California, and then I went to audition later that night. He was very cool to me. He didn't seem at all like the person the press makes him out to be. The audition went well, but I knew they weren't going to hire me, with them being a bunch of skinny white dudes. Then again, cultural background didn't really seem to be an issue with Axl, because April of 1997, in fact, actually March of 1997, before Matt Sorum left, MTV Brazil reported that Guns N' Roses had unsuccessfully made overtures to Sepultura drummer Igor Cavalera. So while Axl was actively auditioning drummers while Matt Sorum appeared to be in the band, Guns N' Roses were also on the lookout for a new producer, and while they weren't working with Mike Klink, one name that did pop up and is probably familiar to a lot of Guns N' Roses fans was Moby. So Moby entered talks with Axl in late February. So according to a Guns N' Roses spokesperson, Moby and Axl are said to have gotten along famously during meetings over the past 3 weeks and have seen eye to eye on a lot of things. Roses met with several producers about handling what will be undoubtedly a labor-intensive project, but he hasn't gone this far without any other producers, according to a Guns N' Roses spokesperson. So Moby did an interview in March of 97 where he said, at the risk of sounding like a sleazy music biz guy, I met with Axl last week to hear the new demo, said Moby, while discussing the possible future of electronica on a panel at the Austin South by Southwest conference. They're writing a lot of loops, believe it or not, and they're doing it better than anybody I've heard lately, he said, referring to Guns N' Roses. So one of the demos Moby might have been presented as a work-in-progress track was Oh My God, mentioning Matt Sorum suggests the song existed in some form in March and February of 1997. So according to Axl, in a press release he put out in 1999, he said musically the song was primarily written by Paul Hughey in early 97, with Dizzy Reed writing the musical hook of the chorus. Former member Duff McKagan, as well as former employee Matt Sorum, failed to see its potential and showed no interest in exploring, let alone recording the piece, referring to Oh My God. So according to Icon magazine in October of 97, I don't think the new music is just a vehicle for him to be a solo performer, referring to Axl. He wants to be a band where everyone contributes, said Moby. On the music I've heard, you can hear everyone's distinctive voice coming through. The music they're working on is a very dramatic quality to it. They're using some modern technology. Axl's really excited about sampling. He loves DJ Shadow and Nine Inch Nails. The stuff I've heard is much more concise than, say, November Rain. Not bombastic, very stripped down, very intense. It's not hard rock music the way that Welcome to the Jungle was. So Moby said, looking back at his time with Guns N' Roses, I found it difficult to chart a linear development of the songs that they were working on, recalls Moby. They would work on something, it would be a sketch for a while, and then they'd put it aside and come back to it a year later or 6 months later. He became a little defensive when I asked him about the vocals, referring to Axl. He said he was going to get to them eventually. Most of the stuff that he played me was just sketches, he said. He said, they've asked me to be producer, Moby says, but I'm not sure I'm capable of doing it because if nothing else, making a record is going to be a long, long process. And Moby also revealed that he would have had to have moved to LA for 10 months to do it. Even though it means giving up a couple millions of dollars, I had to say no. So Moby did an interview several years back where he talked about his time with Guns N' Roses. Here's what he had to say.
Axl Rose about animal rights.
It was really odd. So I got Axl Rose told me that he loved that album, and Joe Strummer told me that he loved it. Wow. And this is the funniest thing, I got a piece of fan mail. Remember one piece of fan mail that I got for animal rights, and it was from Terence Trent D'Arby.
Wow.
And it was a handwritten letter from Terence Trent D'Arby on Terence Trent D'Arby official stationery, which is vaguely purple. And just saying like how much he appreciated that I had made this record. And I've never met Terence Trent D'Arby, but so even though the record sold terribly and was critically maligned, Bono really liked it. So Bono, Joe Strummer, Axl Rose, and Terence Trent D'Arby all seem to like that record.
I don't know what's more random, the fact that you got a handwritten note from Terence or the fact that you know Axl Rose.
Yeah, well, for a brief moment, I was pegged to be the producer of Chinese Democracy. So I spent some time with Axl and the band at that point in Los Angeles, and I eventually decided that I wasn't the right person to produce it, but I did get a first-hand look into, the mind of Axl, and it's a very interesting place, and he actually made me feel quite paternal. Like I almost wanted to sort of protect him in a way, because he seemed very vulnerable.
Was that when he was trying to go for the pseudo-industrial sound of Guns N' Roses, or were you going to try to make a straight-ahead rock record with him?
This was 98 or 97, and I did make one suggestion that didn't go over too well, because at this point, even by 97 or 98, they had spent a lot of money on it, and I said, how about this? Rent a crummy studio on the Lower East Side and spend 2 weeks in the studio, and at the end of those 2 weeks, you release what you've made. And you record the tape, you don't use Pro Tools, you don't use anything, and you make it the way you made Appetite for Destruction. And no one in the Guns N' Roses camp liked that idea very much.
Oh my God.
So, also in 1997, Guns N' Roses were without a lead guitar player. So Matt Sorum, who was friends with Robin Fink, introduced him to Axl Rose and said he would make a great foil for Slash, who could then return to the lineup. But according to Axl, he thought Robin should be replacing Slash. So Axl had become familiar with Robin Fink, not only because of Matt Sorum, but Axl had went to see Cirque du Soleil perform, and he noticed a guitar player playing with them, and it was Robin Fink. And basically they started talking, and Robin was invited to basically jam with Guns N' Roses. So according to Robin, he said that Duff and Matt were still in the band, and they jammed on some Guns N' Roses songs as well as some covers. So introducing Robin Fink to Guns N' Roses was really Matt Sorum's last contribution to the band. So even in 1996, Matt revealed he had been fired a number of times by Axl. He said, Axl fired me 2 or 3 times and he called me back. We've all been fired at least one time. You never heard about it? Seriously, it's true that sometimes he goes too far. Sometimes I open my mouth and say, okay, Axl, F off, and then he fires me. So you know what? I know he'll call me the next day. I feel I'm in security and I know I will be the GNR drummer for a long time. So according to Duff, he said Matt was never a full member of the band. He was on an ejector seat, and Axl said, I'm going to fire him. I answered that decision required more than just one person to be taken since we were a band, that he alone didn't have the majority. All of this because Matt told him he was wrong. The truth is Matt was right and Axl was wrong. So what was Axl wrong about? So according to Duff, it was about schedules and the way Axl was late for the next album. So one day, Paul Tobias, who was rehearsing with the band and was Axl's close friend, made a negative remark about Slash, and Matt Sorum got into an argument with him and got into an argument with Axl, and basically Axl fired Matt, and that was the end of it. So it happened around April of 97, but even as late as August of 97, GNR spokespeople were saying that Matt was still involved with the band, so it's not clear exactly what date Matt was fired. So even in 2001, Matt Sorum still appeared to be talking with Axl, or tried to mend fences. He said, I phoned Axl 4 times to let him know I'm still here. Matt Ruse, but Axl, he's a private person. So here's a news story from MTV in 1997 where they talked about Axl Rose and why he hasn't been seen in public, and the next Guns N' Roses album.
Burst upon the scene with its Appetite for Destruction album, and it's been 6 years since the group released its last hit album, the double CD Use Your Illusion. During that period, Guns was probably the biggest hard rock band in the world. since then, however. Frontman Axl Rose, who legally owns the rights to the group's name, has divested himself of former bandmates, including songwriter Izzy Stradlin and guitarist Slash. Rose has apparently been holed up in his Los Angeles home, keeping a very low profile. When Abby Keir set out to get an update on Rose, she let her fingers do the walking.
It's been some time since we've heard from W. Axl Rose. No more news reports of concert riots, arrests, controversial lyrics, or duets with Elton John. So we decided it'd be a good time to make some phone calls to find out what Axl's been up to. And just so that everybody knows out there, Jerry, you do Metal Edge magazine, which I have here somewhere, your magazine. And I know that, you know, this is your thing. So what's been some of...
He's a recluse. I mean, I haven't even seen the guy.
You haven't seen him anywhere?
No, I live in L.A. I've lived here for 4 years. I've not run into him once. He doesn't go out.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
So we've got Tommy Lee on the phone. So now, Tommy, what's your take on why Axl has kind of just, you know, in a sense, you know, disappeared from at least from the public eye?
You know, I don't really know. I would imagine that, you know, he's maybe avoiding going through some of the painful things that we've actually been through.
Well, what do you mean some of the painful things that you had been through as far as...
When you release a record and, you know, it's just a different time and there's a whole new wave of music and it's, you know, a lot of changes took place.
Yeah.
Maybe Axl's got his, you know, storm windows up and they're all boarded up and he's waiting until it, you know, passes.
It's been almost, I believe, with us for MTV News, it's been about 5 years since we actually talked to him. So that's a long time to kind of be out of the, you know, limelight, so to say. So in that 5 years, what are some of the things he's been doing? He's just been enjoying life?
Well, he's been doing a lot of reading and also learning new instrumentation. He's been learning to play guitar.
Is this album, in a sense, a solo project since mostly all of the original members of the band, Guns N' Roses, are apparently not going to be on this album?
I wouldn't assume that.
Is there going to be a Guns N' Roses album, you know, like say before the year 2000? You know, I mean, it's like we're coming on
the world's most frequently asked question. But all I can tell you is there will be an album when Axl says it's done.
Rose is now working with techno star Moby, although they haven't started recording yet. He's also said to be putting together a new experimental Guns N' Roses lineup that will include original bassist Duff McKagan. Apparently, Rose does get out of the house once in a while, as he was recently spotted at a Radiohead concert in Los Angeles. That's it for...
So with Matt Sorum out of the band, Guns N' Roses were looking for a new drummer, and one of those people that Axl turned to was Chris Verena, who had played in Nine Inch Nails. So in April of '97, he gave an interview where he said, after Matt Sorum left the band, I got a call from the guys about coming down and jamming. Duff was still in it. They'd already gotten Robin Fink. Axl was super well listed. He was always a big Nails fan. They wanted the option of experimenting with electronics. My role was supposed to be drumming and programming. He said Axl was quiet, soft-spoken, very amicable, and friendly, and was always very up, recalls drummer Chris Verena, who turned down an offer to join the band after a few weeks of sessions that Rose rarely attended. Hey, did you see that movie that opened last night, or did you see the news today, or check out these records today? That sort of thing. He loved to debate or discuss something with Axl. We're trying to get ideas together, see who was compatible with who as far as a band vibe, says former Nine Inch Nails drummer Chris Verena, who came in for a few sessions in the spring of '97 with late night jams going from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. while they were still taking place at the complex. So Verena turned down the drumming spot in G&R to work on a record of his own. It was going to be a long commitment, says Verena. There was no firm lineup. Axl had a definite direction he ultimately wanted to head towards, but at that time there wasn't even a song yet. But at the same time, while Guns N' Roses were auditioning Chris Verena, they also had David Abruzzi's, who had worked with Pearl Jam. So according to Axl in a 2009 interview he did, he said the rehearsals with Dave and Chris as a duo were really cool. It was a shame that it didn't work out. So even Matt Sorum confirmed that both drummers were rehearsing with the band and they had worked with Moby in 1997. So 1997 ended on a sour note, just like 1996. So in August of that year, Duff was expecting his first child, And he wrote in his book that he quit the band 2 weeks before his daughter Grace was born. He said it was not fun, and that's the reason. The reason why I stayed in the band was to be a bridge between Axl and Slash. He said Guns had been paying rent on a studio for 3 years from 1994 to 1997 and still did not have a single song. The whole operation was so erratic that it just didn't seem to fit with my hopes for parenthood, for stability, and when it came to leaving the band, it wasn't about Axl, I just had new challenges on my mind. So he said he went to dinner with Axl and his manager Doug Goldstein at that time. He said he was the manager of GNR and still Axl's. Me and Axl were getting along well and we had a good conversation. I said, Axl, we've had very much fun together, but it's your own band now. I'm not interested in you as a dictator. I didn't come here to talk about money advance for the next record. You can have it. So that would be the last time that Duff and Axl would speak for almost a decade. So that does it for this episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. We'll be back next time looking at 1998, including Axl's arrest at the Phoenix airport in February of 98, which would be his first public appearance in almost half a decade. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to comment in the comment section below and hit the subscribe button if you love Guns N' Roses as much as I do. Take care.